Hi, and welcome back to In the Flow with River. I am really excited that you're joining me and super pumped about today's video. Now we start getting into how do we get off of the victim triangle. And just as a reminder, the victim triangle is a transactional analysis way of looking at how do we interact in dysfunctional family systems. It's something that we've learned oftentimes in childhood, where we get into the role of the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. And it's all really central to what is our relationship to power and what does that mean. So learning to get off of the triangle is really about increasing our awareness of ourselves and what's happening within us. And one of the ways that we do that is by asking some really important questions. So let's dive right into what are the questions. Okay, so the first question in getting off of the triangle is this: to ask yourself, what is it that I'm feeling right now? One of the things that happens a lot of times for people that are living their life on the triangle is there is a total disconnect between having an awareness of what we're feeling within ourselves versus what's happening around us. You know, the behavior of being on the triangle is one of really hypervigilance to all the stimuli around us and always being in a place of reactivity. So when we're working to get off of the triangle, we're working to get out of being in a reactive state of mind and into a place of an awareness. And so knowing what we're feeling is critical. In the beginning, when I was doing my work to get off of the triangle, I cannot tell you guys how many times I would sit there and not know how to answer the question, what are you feeling? I would just look like completely stumped. I didn't know how to answer. I was like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I just would go into the story. Well, this is happening or that's happening, but I didn't know what I was feeling. So connecting with what is it that I'm feeling, you know, and asking yourself, what am I feeling right now? Am I hurt? Am I sad? Am I scared? Am I angry? What's happening to me? What is it that I'm feeling? We want to increase our awareness of what we're feeling so that we can start to have a better understanding of what's happening, as well as becoming more deliberate and intentional about how we're dealing with things and can navigate life with more ease. Okay, so asking ourselves, what is it that I'm feeling? The second question that I like to ask my clients, and I check in with myself, is where am I noticing sensation in my body? So with the mind-body connection, what happens is that when we feel emotions and different things that are happening, it's always coming into our physical body. And there are so many good books out there. If you're interested in people who are doing work in the mind-body connection, there's a whole lot of them. Bessel van der Kolk looks at trauma in the body. There are numerous books that show there is a huge connection between what we are feeling and what starts happening in our body. So we can kind of use our body as like a roadmap to kind of get a sense of what is happening. You know, sometimes people will say, oh, I'm feeling like my throat is closing up. I'm feeling it all in here. My heart is just hurting. My chest feels tight, or I'm feeling tension in my back, or in my stomach I'm feeling, you know, tense or tightness, or it's turning. So these all become these really important tools to increase our awareness. So what is it that I'm feeling, and where in my body do I feel this, right? And in order to answer those questions, you have to get quiet. You have to sit with yourself, and you have to be really present. These are not easy questions to answer, and especially for people that have lived their whole lives, or a lot of their lives, relating to people from the standpoint of the victim and the perpetrator and the rescuer. Asking them to connect with their feelings is like just such a foreign concept, because their own personal feelings oftentimes don't enter into awareness. They're just like a pinball machine reacting to the stimuli of what's happening around them. So what is it that I'm feeling, and where in my body am I feeling that? And to not go into a story, right? I tell people all the time, let's stop telling stories, because what we'll do is we'll tell the story and the story of a story of a story of a story of a story, and it always goes on and on and on and on, and it just becomes like an illusion, and we can't see with clarity what is it that we are really feeling. So to be able to connect and say, oh, I'm feeling scared, or nervous, or angry, okay? Oftentimes anger is one of those emotions. My experience that oftentimes people on the triangle either have, it's like a love-hate relationship with anger. Either they love being angry because it's very powerful, it's a powerful energy, or they hate feeling anger because they weren't allowed to be angry. And yet all of the emotions we all feel at various different times, and there's nothing wrong with any of them as long as we have a pathway to express our emotions in a healthy way. And that's what we're learning with getting off the triangle, is how do I connect to what is it that I'm feeling, and some other things, and also how do I express my feelings in constructive and healthy ways, not destructive and dysfunctional ways. So we're asking ourselves, what is that I'm feeling, and where in my body am I feeling it? And then here's the next question, and this is really, I think this is the game changer. What do I need to do for myself? I'm going to say it again. What do I need to do for myself? Again, this is another one where I was oftentimes stumped, because when you're growing up in a family where there's all this dysfunction, oftentimes people's needs do go unmet. And not only do they go unmet, but we're taught that our needs don't matter, or we're taught that we're being difficult or demanding or high maintenance because we have needs. And so we've learned how to shut down our feelings and our needs, but we're still in this really reactive place. So having a connection with what am I feeling, and where am I feeling this in my body, and what do I need to do for myself in this moment? That starts to strengthen your relationship to your own personal power, because a lot of the work to get off the triangle is about attuning and listening to what are your needs, and how do you learn how to meet your own needs. There's an aspect to healing this that is a lot of reparenting. It's a lot of giving to ourselves that which was often not given to us when we were children. So, and I want to say this as a reminder that we stay out of the scope of blaming our families, or blaming our parents, or blaming, anybody in this, because that is disempowering. When we are blaming other people, it is totally giving our power away. When we start connecting to our sense of power in a whole different way, we start to forgive others and forgive ourselves. And so we want to learn that what do we need to do to take care of our own needs, and what are our needs? And just spending time with that, I mean, you could spend quite a lot of time in that, because connecting with what are our emotional needs at any given time, that's higher level stuff. One of the things that I'm still continuing to connect with is that question, what is it that I need to do for myself? Sometimes it's what is it that I need to do with myself, but really, what is it that I need to do for myself? And a lot of times it might be being quiet, reminding myself that I'm going to be okay, parenting myself, being loving and kind to myself. And it's so different and out of the box that in the beginning, when my therapist would say, so what do you need to do for yourself? I really did not know, because I only knew how to try and get my needs met through acting out or being reactionary and hoping, right? This was like the victim energy, hoping that somebody was going to come and save me or rescue me. So connecting with how do I meet my own needs was very challenging, but also incredibly powerful, because now I know I can meet my own needs. And we also learned how to then do this piece of it, how to become assertive, how to ask for our needs to get met. And so we learned that it's okay to ask. In this victim triangle and dysfunctional families, oftentimes not only do we not know what our needs are, but we are not allowed to even ask for our needs to get met, or even knowing what our needs are. And so there's a lot of, oftentimes I think, inner child work that will come up for people when they're doing the work to get off of the triangle. And it's funny, because when I was in graduate school many years ago, I had such a hard time with that whole inner child thing. And what I think it was now is that at the time I had a lot of inner child work to do, and it just seemed so cheesy to me. I just was like, inner child schmiled, like, aw, poor baby, and hugging myself and loving myself, like, what is that? And yet I think that that's probably like at the forefront of the work that I do for myself, but also in my practice with my clients. There's a lot of attending to what are our needs and what do we need to do to meet those needs, and who are healthy people in our life that we can connect with and ask for our needs to get met, and learning that it's healthy to ask for our needs to get met. And we also need to pay attention to the people that are interested in meeting our needs and the people that aren't capable, right? And not from a place of blame, because that just is victim mentality, right? So what we want to get away from is blaming other people, really toxic behavior. And I was in that camp for years, you know. I think even there's, you know, some of the older forms of therapy that almost, I don't think that there's an intention behind it, but there's a lot of blaming energy. And what that does is it is other focused as opposed to self-focused. When we are blaming other people, we're assuming all sorts of things, right? And we're thinking that other people are intentionally doing what they're doing, as opposed to remembering that we're all, you know, kind of acting out our own little dramas and stories in our own ways, right? All of us are. I love what Ram Dass says, that, you know, he says we're all just walking each other home, right? We're all on this journey. And so we've got to stay away from that blame, because it doesn't serve any purpose. It just creates more stuckness. I promise you that. So we want to get away from blame. We want to get away from this feeling of helplessness, you know, like that idea of I can't meet my own needs, or I can't do anything for myself. That's not going to create change, right? And yet that helplessness mentality and energy is central to the victim triangle, because it's all about that relationship to power. And so the more helpless we are, the more likely we are to stay on the victim triangle. When we start taking back our own power, we start to realize all the places where we are powerful and the things that we can do, as opposed to what we cannot do. All right, so it's changing that helplessness into being empowered. And we also learn assertiveness skills. We learn how to ask for our needs to get met. We learn how to communicate what we're feeling in healthy ways, and to be assertive about what we're feeling without being aggressive or being passive aggressive, or just simply passive. Okay. We want to turn from self-pity, you know, just feeling bad for ourselves, into changing our behavior so we start to feel a greater sense of self-esteem and self-worth. I think that those are byproducts of living in a healthy state of mind, but they're not something that you can directly work on. They are the result of. Just like I've talked to people about how being, you know, physically fit is really a byproduct of all the other behaviors that are created, like eating healthy, getting enough sleep, exercising, staying active, meditating, all that kind of stuff. The byproduct is having a fit physique, but the energy and effort is all going into a lot of things to create that. Okay, so we want to also really start to connect with what is our experience in relationship to guilt and shame. I love Brené Brown's definition of the difference between guilt and shame. She says it like this, or this is a modified version of it, but the way that she explains it is that shame is the experience of I am wrong or I am bad, where guilt is more like I did something wrong or I did something that wasn't good. So I love this example that is given, I think, in one of her books, where she says, you know, like, let's say you go out one night and you stay out too late, and the next morning you are late into work, right? Guilt sounds like this: oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I stayed out too late last night visiting and having dinner with friends and I overslept, right? Guilt is I did something wrong, I stayed out too late and I overslept. Shame is I am a horrible person for what I did, right? The difference between guilt and shame is really an important one, and it's an important distinction to make, in that we can connect those feelings with the difference between who we are versus our behaviors, right? Shame is about the essence of who we are, feeling bad about the essence of who we are, where guilt is a recognition of our behaviors not aligning up with what we may want for ourselves. We want to also get away from approval seeking. And I think that there's so many of us that are, I call it recovering people pleasers, where we learned how to get the approval from others, and that validation was our key to, am I okay? Am I enough? So learning how to approve of ourselves and learning how to connect with, how do I start giving that approval and seeking that from within myself as opposed to outside of myself, also starts to really be a real game changer, and starts to turn things in a very pivotal way, because we're now checking in with ourselves to see, how do I feel about what's happening? How do I feel about how I'm showing up in the world? Do I feel good about this? And I'm no longer looking outside of myself for that validation and approval, because that's a real slippery slope. I'm sure you guys have all experienced that and have some understanding of how treacherous that is. You know, when our whole sense of self-worth and self-esteem comes from external things, again, that is a very disempowered state. So we really want to stay away from that. We want to learn how to approve of ourselves. And a lot of times, again, going back to that victim triangle, you know, in those family relationships and the way that we were dealing with things, oftentimes, you know, it was approval-seeking behavior so that our needs could get met. So we have to recognize that some of these things were really about how were our needs getting met, and how do we learn healthier ways to get our needs met. And in order to do that, we have to know what it is that we need. So being able to start asking yourself that question, what is it that I need now? And how do I give that to myself? How do I do that for myself? It's such an interesting inquiry, you know, to connect with, what do I need for myself? Do I need quiet time? Do I need connection time? Do I need to journal about my feelings? Do I need to scream? Do I need to yell? Do I need to get angry? Do I need to connect with that emotion? What do I need for myself? And finding those ways to meet your needs. And they're going to be different for everybody. I know that one of the things that I'll do is whenever I feel fear, that seems to be a real trigger. I can go into a real, like, little girl, small child feeling where I just will feel overwhelmed with fear, and I just will think about what my mom would have said. You know, she would have said, "Oh, you're okay, you're okay." And so those are the things that I'll say to myself. You know, you're okay, and you're going to be all right, and all is well. And a lot of times it's just being with ourselves, and being with ourselves in the way that we become our own best friend and the person that we love the most, because we need to have a healthy relationship with ourselves. Okay? We want to strengthen our ability to meet our needs. And what that also does is we're also taking responsibility for our needs being met. We're not dumping it onto somebody else, you know? We're not going around going, you rescue me and you take care of me and you show me my own self-worth. We are taking responsibility back. And taking that responsibility back also, again, it's another empowering thing. The more responsibility we take for our lives, the more we look and we say, okay, I'm responsible for all of this, so I can choose to look at this from the lens of, if I don't like what I'm seeing in my life, I get to do something about it. That's the gift of taking responsibility, is we can start to connect the dots to say, I can actually do something different. I can do something to change this situation and these circumstances. Another important key to getting off of the triangle is to move away from blaming people to forgiveness. Forgiveness of others and forgiveness of ourselves. I think that when I think about forgiveness, I love the idea that forgiveness is it's never saying that what somebody else has done is okay. That has nothing to do with forgiveness. And whoever connected like the forgive and forget quote, we can forgive, but we can't forget. I hate that. It just drives me crazy. I'm like, why did those two ever come together? We don't forget things, but we can forgive. And what forgiveness is to me is like, I imagine like a backpack, and the backpack holds all of my hurts or all the transgressions of what other people have done to me, or the things that I have done to other people, or the things I've done to myself. And in that backpack is just all of these bricks, and they just weigh us down, and they just kind of constrict us. Forgiveness is like taking that backpack off, and we're like, oh, like getting that weight off. I feel freer. I feel lighter. When we forgive ourselves and when we forgive others, we are creating an expansive state of being. Another little gem that I think is really powerful is, I love Carolyn Mesa's work. You guys are going to hear me talk a lot about her and Brene Brown and other people. But one of the things that she says in so many different things is, what is in one is in the whole, and what is in the whole is in one. So whatever we see in ourselves is in other people, whatever we see in other people is in ourselves. There are always aspects of all of that. We are all connected in that way. And so when we think about the people that have hurt us, to look and to say, whatever they're dealing with, on some level, I have that too. And vice versa, right? So when we start to see the oneness and the unity in all of us, it kind of dissolves that blame, where we realize, wait, I too have done that, or I have also experienced that. And so we can connect in a real human way with other people when we think about, that what is in one is in the whole, and what's in the whole is in one. That just really resonates and lands for me. I hope that that's something that lands for you. Forgiveness is a lot of work. It really is. And we've got to always be checking in to look at, who are we holding a grudge against? And we need to free ourselves. We need to do some work around that. Maybe in another video, I will do a video on forgiveness, because I could talk about it for days. It's such I think it's such a incredible experience to look at, who am I holding grievances against? Who am I holding hurt against? And resentment, and cutting those cords and freeing ourselves. And the pathway is through forgiveness. One of my favorite books in the whole world, by Jerry Jampolsky, Love is Letting Go of Fear. He talks about how peace of mind and happiness should be our single goal. And the path to that is through forgiveness. And that has for sure been my experience, that when we forgive others, we are really releasing them as well as us, so that we can move on to being our brightest version of ourselves. So it's important to know that we want to get away from all of those things. We want to be taking responsibility, feeling empowered, and forgiving others. That all leads to then having greater sense of self-esteem and self-worth, because we start to connect with that. Look at my Sophie. Sorry, distraction. I can't help myself. I've tried so hard to keep her off the couch, and it just does not work. But anyway, back to this. So we need to learn that our needs are important and our needs matter. And the more that we connect with that, we also recognize that other people have needs and that those matter too. I think when I was really living a lot of my life on the triangle, I was so self-focused, and yet if you would have asked me at the time, I would have said the opposite. In fact, one of my actually very close friends, who's a godmother to my son, my girlfriend Shannon, many years ago, when I was really in the victim triangle and living my life and I couldn't pull out of it, I had gone through a divorce and I was just in a really reactive place. I remember her saying to me, all you think about and care about is yourself. And I screamed at her. I mean, I became irate. I was like, are you kidding me? That is not it at all. And I did not see it. I truly, you guys, I didn't see it at all. And yet when I look back at that time period, that was very true. And I think that that's one of the detriments of the victim triangle, is that we are so self-absorbed and so focused in on ourselves, but not in a healthy way, that we aren't present for other people. I had that awareness a couple of years ago. I think that she was right. You know, I was so self-absorbed and so self-focused, and yet at the time I didn't see it at all because I was on the triangle. And when we get off of the triangle, because we're not in that place where we're really deprived of our needs being met and knowing how we feel, we have so much more space to hold for other people and for their needs. So I think that's kind of a cool byproduct as well, is that the more we attune to our own needs, the more awareness we have around other people's needs and how to show up and to meet other people's needs. I know that a lot of people have talked about how they feel like their relationships become so much more fulfilling and meaningful when they get off of the triangle, because they're a whole person interacting with the world in a much different way. All right. So one more emotion I think that's important to kind of just connect with is anger. So anger is one of those things that I've really watched people and myself either have a total disconnect with or too much anger. And one aspect of anger I think that's really helpful is to realize that sometimes when we get angry, there's some value in looking at what am I getting angry about. And again, going back to the triangle, looking at what's happening, what am I feeling, what's going on, doing that awareness inquiry. But looking at our relationship to anger. For me, anger wasn't something it wasn't really okay to express anger because you'd kind of get into trouble. And so I learned how to stuff my anger down. When I was younger, I would, emotionally eat, or I would just suppress those feelings. I would hold this inside. And then later, it would like leak out of me. And it would leak out whether it was reacting to my children, being impatient. I used to be so impatient everywhere in my life. And I think that was very closely connected with my feelings of anger. One of the things that I say now, and I'm not bragging, but it's like I'm always like amazed at my patience, because when you're not constantly feeling anger all the time, there's so much more peace, So we've got to look at what is our relationship to anger and how do we connect with that. All right, so I want to wrap up. So to condense, getting off of the triangle, being aware of all of the different energies, the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer, knowing what is our entry point, what is our exit point, okay? Then asking yourself the question, what is it that I'm feeling? Where in my body am I feeling this? And what do I need to do for myself? Okay. So until next week we're going to finish up our series on the victim triangle, moving from the victim triangle to freedom, and looking at what does that look like, and how does that change our life. Okay, much peace to you guys.